My name is Pastor Locke. I'm pastor of Hansville Community Church in Hansville, Washington, just across the Sound from Seattle. And I want to take a minute to address the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I believe that's important for us to do. I meant to do it on Sunday. I preached on 1 Peter 1 through 12, which talks about expect trials, expect tribulations, expect difficulties as a result of pursuing the things that God has given you to do. And in my mind, it so worked together that I figured I would work that in and it would be a part of it, but it just fell out of my ear. I just got going and didn't do it. And I think for our particular context of our society here in in Washington State, Western Washington, that leads to what I'm doing here today, which is much better, and I'll be able to spend a bit more time, a bit more depth on talking about the life and work of Charlie Kirk, such that you will have a better understanding of who he is, if you don't know who he is, what he stood for, and how his faith was involved in what he was doing. So I just want to say from the get-go, I believe Charlie Kirk was a good person. I believe that he was a genuine person and that he came from a place of love for the people that he was talking to. And I'm gonna break that down as we go a little bit further on. I went to, on Saturday night, I went to a vigil for Charlie Kirk. And I saw a lot of people standing, praying, holding a candle, and there were a lot of speakers who came up to the microphone, had something to share. A lot of what we do is, in a situation like this, we try to say, where did this problem come from? How did we get here? And there was a lot of description of that, and I appreciate that because that's an important part of the discussion. How did we get here? How did we get to the place where on ideological grounds someone was assassinated? Right? We haven't had that too many times across history, though probably more times than we're even aware of. But Charlie Kirk was assassinated on ideological grounds. And what was it? What got into our society that got us there? And so I was observing that, and I just felt compelled to go up and speak because we need a path forward. We need yes, we understand how we got here. We understand that this is not a desirable situation. How do we move forward? And what I promoted was came out of a book that I read recently called "Live Not by Lies." And "Live Not by Lies" is a maxim that was coined by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a person that went through the Russian Communist Society. And this was the maxim that became popularized in the resistance movement there as they combated the attempt at basically mind control, social control, atheistic promotion into the society. And so they came to the conclusion that what is necessary is that you don't live by lies anymore. You are unwilling to speak something you know to be false, even in the interrogation rooms, even in the torture rooms, and that kind of thing, and doing their best to do that. Charlie Kirk exemplified that mentality. He did not live by lies. He was true to what he believed, and he advocated for what he believed as the best ordering of human society going forward. And this is the way that we can live together, and not just live together, but to prosper together. But there has to be a foundation underneath that. And Charlie Kirk's foundation was Jesus Christ. It was based in his faith, and it arose from his faith, and he lived by his faith, and he advocated that out to other people. And so he would have these discussions with college campus kids largely, but it would also be in other speaking venues and interviews and different things like that he would talk to. But he was very effective. He was very effective in welcoming those who disagree with him, bringing them up to the mic, having a conversation with them, and keeping other people from shouting them down or anything like that. You know, crowds sometimes get unruly, and he would say, "Hey, guys, we're here to listen. we're to understand. And he would find that common ground, and so many times when people got the understanding and the conversation and the logical progression of things, it suddenly clicked for them. And people were able to change their minds and come back and say, hey, Charlie Kirk showed me the truth. And make no mistake, that's why Charlie Kirk was killed. Not because he was dangerous, not because he was crazy, not because he was lying, but because he made a rational argument that led to people agreeing with that argument. Rational. Not hyped up, made up, thought-ending statements. And this is kind of borrowing from the latter part of what I'm going to have to say is when you encounter things that end your thought process, you're looking at a cult. And I'm going to have to get something to drink here. Pardon me. A cult attempts to place something out into your view, a short snippet of a statement that ends your investigation further into what is at stake, what's being discussed. And beware, the BBC is reporting right now that there is a flood of false information. Not just false information, but just outright lies about Charlie Kirk, what he said and what he did. And that those lies are then becoming entrenched and becoming the bullet points that are aimed at the American public to try to obfuscate what is actually going on and who Charlie Kirk actually was. If you see a statement that's just very short, and it places somebody in a bucket or a label that you no longer investigate further, or an idea that you no longer go ahead and investigate forward just based on one statement there, you know you're looking at a cult. You're looking at a thought-ending experiment. Charlie Kirk was about opening up and saying, hey, there's these books and these authors and this history and all these things that you can look at. Bring all of that together. Study it. Bring your arguments to me. It wasn't just about college kids. He was like, go get your professors. I'll debate them too. And having that ongoing and large discussion rather than just say, oh, you're one of those. I don't have to talk to you. Very much so. That's what the other side just saw Charlie Kirk as a threat to their worldview and needed to be eliminated. That was all the problem was. If that shooter had just walked those 200 yards down to the microphone, Charlie Kirk would not be dead today. If he had just had a conversation with him and laid out his ideas and been willing to be faced with the facts of what he believed and what was actually true and verifiable in the world. Charlie Kirk, his assassination is a turning point for our society, and I mean that literally. Looking back at history, and I love to study history, there have been times when things like this have sent whole societies into a tailspin. I don't want that. I don't think you want that either. But the difference that you can see here is that those who are going to candlelight vigils, holding candles and giving speeches, is far different than when leftists are upset of the outcome of something. And so I hope by the end of my talking here, you'll have a different view that we're not the same. There's a vast difference between people like Charlie Kirk and those who hold views that when they don't get their way, they get destructive. There's a poll done in the last few days, and actually there was another one that was done even before all of this, and it found that if you take the progression from most conservative to most liberal, using the liberal term, maybe leftist is a better term, most leftist, those who are most leftist, a quarter of them are in support of violence against those who they disagree with. And it gets progressively less and less till it's vanishingly small as you get more conservative. I'm not just throwing these things out here. The more disturbing thing is that on the metric of age, those who are youngest are more given to violence against someone who they disagree with, as opposed to those who get older. It's our next generation is in danger of carrying out the logical end of the rhetoric that is being spoken in our national discourse. To call people fascist and racist and phobic of something, to call people that is a thought-ending statement so that you don't have to investigate. Those who did investigate Charlie Kirk and have looked at his videos, and they're all over social media. You can go to YouTube and you can see mountains of them and see the actual person and how he engaged with people. He was none of those things. He wasn't a fascist. He was the opposite of a fascist. He was against, because fascism is the binding of government and business and the church into one, controlled by one thing. And that is not Charlie Kirk. He advocated for a small government. He advocated for the liberties, religious liberties, speech liberties, all of these things. He advocated for all of those things. And so to say he's a fascist or a Nazi or some extreme, what you're doing is putting the gun in the hands of the shooter. Oh, well, it's okay to kill someone who's truly evil, but they don't stop to investigate whether or not that is true. Charlie Kirk opened the dialogue, and we need to continue it. And there are those who are coming after, and they will pick up the bloody microphone that Charlie Kirk left behind, and will attempt to speak and carry on the open conversation that he had. But in many ways, Charlie Kirk was unique, and we probably won't see someone exactly like him again in the future. And that is a huge loss. And I'm not saying just for people that agree with him. That's a huge loss for people who disagree with him, because they had an opportunity to be able to speak their ideas and get them reflected back and get a greater understanding of both sides of the political spectrum and to understand one another. Instead, someone took it upon themselves to act as God themselves and take out someone who disagreed with their life. It is a terrific loss. I believe that Charlie Kirk was a true Christian martyr, in that he followed Christ in the same path of speaking the truth to those that did not want their power taken away. And while he did suffer death, I'm not making Charlie Kirk into a Christ figure or anything like that. I'm just saying his price was his life. He was truly authentic. Many of the characterizations try to paint him as someone who was just in it for the money, or in it for the fame, or in it for the likes on Facebook, whatever. No, he knew the risks of what he was doing. He had a security team. He had a warning system and a way to do that. I wish his security team had been to the extent of a presidential watch and care, or maybe this individual would not have been successful. But he knew the risks, and he spoke the truth anyway. Live not by lies. And I keep repeating that, and it is something that and I'm not just saying to you, or if you're watching, but I'm also saying it to myself. Because the temptation is to make people feel comfortable by saying what they want to hear. But that's a lie. And so much of what we've taught our kids and raised in our society is this, let's all just find a way to get along. Let's just ignore the topics that we disagree on. Well, that has resulted in a fracturing. That results in people thinking that they are their own God and can pull triggers as a result of being their own judge, jury, and executioner. No, we have to talk. We have to talk about the tough things. That doesn't mean I, I want to go into politics or anything, because people will always let you down. But ideas, there, I can talk about ideas. I can talk about beliefs and doctrine and the philosophy that of what you do has an emergence into the real world that is either good or bad. And right now, we live in a society that, since the 70s, when I was born, that said, let's try this. Let's just cast off all of our moral restrictions, because the world would be so much better if we didn't have those. And it was a grand experiment that they wanted to engage in. I'm here to tell you now, it's failed. The experiment has failed. It has failed families, it has failed children, it has failed men, it has failed women, it has failed the world, it has failed our government, it has failed our education system, it's failed across the board. We did not gain anything. We didn't progress, we regressed. And Charlie Kirk was about a accountability to the culture of saying, okay, you've tried these ideas. Let's look at the data. They have not worked. And in fact, they're nothing new. They've been tried throughout human history and they've never worked. Let's go back. Let's go back and start from where we left off and progress with what God has given us. And God has given us some terrific and very good things. Have we gotten it right? Has it been abused and done wrongly? Absolutely. But the principle itself still stands. And that's really the beauty of it, is that the principle itself disproved its own abuse. Even people who were incongruent in saying all men are created equal, and yet some men were enslaved to other men. It was the principle of all men are created equal that overturned the abuse of that. And that's just one point among many that Charlie Kirk talked about. I believe we can still have these dialogues. I believe there's still a path forward. And really, I want to emphasize and warn the dangers of what led to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It basically arose out of the misinformation, mislabeling, short-sighted broadcast communication. There have been too many people using too loosely the term of fascist, Nazi, extremist, and far right. I think that is drawing on imagery from historical past to place people in a box that you no longer have to listen to them, you no longer have to investigate for yourself. You just cancel. And I believe there should be a bar for canceling. The people who are out there advocating horrible things after Charlie Kirk's assassination is not civil. It's not even in the civil discourse realm. I saw one post that said, I hope they kill his wife next, so that his children will be taken and put in foster care and hopefully will be raised by better parents. That's beyond the pale. That's not an ideological difference. That is a moral difference that gets at the very foundation of us being able to live together. I would have trouble living next to a neighbor who said that about my wife. I would suspect and always worry about their malevolent intentions towards me. No, there are things being said, and please, 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 this is a path forward statement. Please take the time to investigate the claims that are made about Charlie Kirk, because even the BBC is reporting that misinformation is flooding the market. lies. And we've seen prominent figures like Stephen King, the horror writer, Stephen King, repeating some of these lies. Fortunately, he's apologized for that. Though probably you wouldn't hear the apology, only the statement gets left there. No, take the time going forward to become investigators of truth. The Bible says, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Don't just take verse 1, take verse 2 as well. What the Bible is saying is don't be a hypocrite. It's not saying don't judge. It's saying be authentic and be true to what you know is right. I think Charlie Kirk was true to what he knew was right, and that's what he asked us to do. Political violence has no place in our society. Ideological differences should not lead to violence. If you can't handle the discussion, then maybe your ideas are wrong. But please don't stop having the discussion. Please don't stop going down the road of logic and reason that God gave you, which is judgment, which is the ability to judge right from wrong. God gave us that, and He asked us to use it. But you can't use it if you're not having the conversation and if you're not exposed to ideas that you don't currently hold. So I would ask that we pray for Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk's family, friends, organization. There are people who mourn his death, and I just want to take some time here and say, I sympathize with you. I mourn his death as well. Never met him, but I think if I did, I would count him as a friend. As someone who stood up for the faith and stood up for the principles that he authentically held and that he authentically applied to himself. I think that was visible in his life. If you've watched some of his videos and seen his testimony, you recognize that he was a sinner too, and in need of the saving grace of God. He recognized that the fallenness of his humanity was not his destiny, that the corruptness of his mind, will, and emotions was not determinative of who he would be. It was just a starting place. It was a fractured piece of who he was to be, because God would come in and transform you into the design that you were made for. He saw the value of coming to Christ as something that alters the fallen human nature and restores it to the divine nature that God lives through you. That was his message. Often and not, he would go back and talk about his faith as the foundation. And I believe that's true. I believe we have to have God as the foundation for our moral rights and wrongs. Otherwise, people fill that vacuum. And when people fill the vacuum of what is right and wrong, they appoint themselves judge, jury, and executioner. So my friends, I love you, even if you disagree with me. I'd love to have discussion. I'd love to go over the finer points. I recognize Charlie's not a perfect individual. I'm not lifting up a man. I'm lifting up some of the principles that were behind him and recognizing that we as a society have lost something in losing Charlie Kirk. Thank you.